To be able to introduce nation. In this one moment, it's almost incomprehensible that they can exist right now.
And we are grateful.
So close.
Trigger warning. This podcast is intended for men. Not boys, not babies, men.
This is how we disable toxic masculinity.
We need to kill all men.
This pagan patriarchalism that is coming back out of the shadows.
Feminists hate patriarchy.
It's the woman that runs the show and the woman that runs the community and is the backbone of that area.
I'm a nasty woman. A loud, vulgar, proud woman. Patriarchy. Male privilege.
Are you saying you have authority over me? Go get your superior.
I personally can't see why egalitarianism would be a bad thing.
The assumption that wives should make babies instead of money is part of the patriarchy.
Don't say hi to strange women you don't know.
Patriarchy.
The patriarchy.
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 In all things showing thyself a pattern of good works, in doctrine showing uncorruptness, gravity, sincerity. That is Titus 2:7. You are on the Fight, Laugh, Feast Network, and this is The Patriarchy. My name is Tony DePani, and I am joined by my co-host, Pastor Joseph Randall Spurgeon.
Woman, get back in here and make me a sandwich.
Joseph, what sandwich are you eating today?
All right, true story. In Wisconsin, we're in Milwaukee. There's a place called Cops, and man, it's just kind of like it's like if Dairy Queen had good food.
Oh, that's so true.
And so it's the best milkshake. Like it's what do they call it here? They don't like to call it ice cream. Frozen custard.
Ah, yeah.
And so it's pretty much a milkshake. And great, the hamburger, man, with cheese. I've always known that was people in Wisconsin are called cheeseheads. They like cheese. There's something, I don't know what's in this cheese, but it's good. So that's the sandwich. Thank you, Wisconsin.
Well, I was eating a different kind of sandwich earlier. I almost ate a hand sandwich. Let me explain. So I was power washing something outside today, and I don't know how many of you listening have used a power washer. I've used it a few times, haven't used it in a while. It showed by what I almost did to myself. I was power washing something on the ground and moving it around to get all the sides of it. And stupid me, I stuck my hand down to move what I was power washing and got my thumb right in the stream of the power washer and just about turned my knuckle into a hamburger and sliced a good chunk of flesh right off. So,
did you say a hamburger?
A hamburger, yeah.
A hamburger.
Yeah, right. And that was not prepared by my wife. That's what happens when I try to make a sandwich myself. That was not fun. I do not recommend trying to do that. That really hurt.
All right. I'm good.
All right, so I think we have a feminist freak out of the week.
Feminist freak out of the week.
This one looks like it comes to us from HuffPost.
I would go out to gay bars and I would just see how masculinity was so prized. If you're telling me that I'm femme, like I was raised by beautiful, smart, intelligent, fierce women, like are you saying that that's a bad thing? That I'm like,
is this a guy or a girl? I can't even tell.
It's a dude.
That's a dude? Oh man.
Yeah. It's a guy for sure. For sure.
It's male.
Yeah. So did you hear what he said? I was raised by a fierce woman. Are you saying that's a bad thing?
Yes, we are. Oh man. Oh, that's. Are we watching any more of this?
No, I don't really care.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I'm gonna go back and eat my hand sandwich after that. It's more masculine.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it actually just freaked us out more than it was really a freak out.
Oh,
But yeah.
that's gross. Okay. Yeah. Well, moving on to Fierce Women. Or not. That's next week. Never mind.
Well, we're talking about kind of the opposite of Fierce Women, which is guys. You know, we said he was a dude or a guy. There's actually this book that came out in 2008 by this U.S. sociologist named Michael Kimmel. And the name of his book is called Guyland. Guyland. And what he did in this book, he interviewed 400 men, ages 16 to 26. And what he did is he identified a trend, which I think everybody kind of sees now. The trend is young men delaying adulthood. And so what he actually compared the current situation to the situation in 1960. So in 1960, there was almost 70% of American men had been, by the age of 30, they had left home, completed their educations, got married, had children, and basically started building their household, started work. And so that was at least 70% in 1960. Today, less than a third of men reach these milestones before their 30s.
Oh, wow.
And so what he does is he identifies that there's this period in life in which men, or we should call them young men, enter what he calls guy culture, Guyland. It's this inability to pursue hard work, healthy relationships with women, and maturity. What I wanted to do was kind of read to you, if you don't mind, just a couple paragraphs from the book.
So we should have a segment called Story Time with Pastor Joseph Randall Spurgeon.
That sounds like a great little thing there. Why don't we do that? That's what we'll call this. All right, here we go. Andy is 17, a high school senior in the San Diego area. Affable, slightly chubby, and wearing glasses. His Chargers jersey signals his interest in sports. At the moment, he's waiting to hear to which University of California campus he'll be accepted, or if he'll be accepted. Once a reasonably good student, he says he now worries that he's spent so much time playing video games and hanging out in online communities that he hasn't studied hard enough and that his grades have suffered. I kind of get lost in there, you know, he says. My parents think I'm doing homework all the time, so I sort of keep it a secret. While he was hoping for UCLA or Santa Barbara, he's also sending in a few applications to other less competitive state colleges, just in case. My parents are going to freak if I don't get into UCLA, he said, wincing. Brian is 21, a senior chemistry major at Indiana. Serious and earnest, he's putting himself through school by working 2 jobs off campus, waiting tables in a local restaurant on weekends, and stacking books in the science library during the week when he's not in class or lab. He's an honor student. He wakes up at about 6 every morning so he can study in quiet in his dorm room. His freshman roommate, Dave, his friend, has approached college life somewhat differently. A business major, Dave usually wakes up around noon, hangs out at his fraternity house playing video games with his fraternity brothers until dinner, and then heads out to the local bars for the night. He estimates that he drinks 5 nights a week, parties all weekend, and studies only the night before finals, if then. And he's been putting himself through school gambling online, but he ran to a streak of bad luck and now owes about $12,000. Dave says, I think it's great they want to have a career and all, but Brian is like, so uptight. He's such a go-getter. He doesn't get that college is about parties and fun. And oh, did I mention the drinking, he laughs? In another era, these guys would undoubtedly be poised to take their place in the adult world, taking the first steps towards becoming the nation's future professionals, entrepreneurs, and business leaders. They would be engaged to be married, thinking about settling down with a family, preparing for futures as civic leaders and little league dads. Not today. Today, many of these young men poised between adolescence and adulthood are more likely to feel anxious and uncertain. In college, they party hard but are soft on studying. They slip through the academic cracks. Another face in a large lecture hall, getting by with little effort and less commitment. After graduation, they drift aimlessly from one dead-end job to another, spending more time online playing video games and gambling than they do on dates. They hook up occasionally with friends with benefits, go out with their buddies, drink too much, and save too little. After college, they perpetuate that experience and move home or live in group apartments in major cities with several other guys from the dorm or fraternity. They watch a lot of sports. They talk a lot about sports. They look at sports on the internet. They get on sports message boards, and they watch a lot of sports. They have grandiose visions for their futures and not a clue how to get from here to there. And when they do try and articulate this amorphous uncertainty, they're likely to paper it over with a simple, "It's all good." Welcome to Guyland.
Wow. That's a good bit of writing right there. And that's really good. Is that what is that, like a chapter or what is that?
It's kind of the introduction.
Wow. No, I mean, yeah, it was a good length of it, but yeah, that's a good introduction. That's phenomenal.
Yes. So what he's pointing out to is, I think what we're seeing is young men kind of in this Peter Pan mindset, refusing to take on the responsibilities of adulthood, and they remain fixated, kind of the trappings of boyhood. And yet they are adults in their bodies, but in the way they're acting, they're not taking responsibility. And one of the things that they lack in all of this is any sense of gravitas, of seriousness, of a mission and purpose. And said it's all, sports. You've heard me read there in his section a lot about, watching sports, reading sports, listening to sports. It's watching other people do battle, yet just fixated on the boyhood side of things. And I'm sure many people recognize that it's an issue in our day. And I would say one of the issues about it is that there's actually real battles for young men to be fighting. And what they've done, though, is taken these battles and made them kind of virtual reality.
I think one of the things that probably feeds into that is we're witnessing, and I don't know, it might be kind of a vicious circle, kind of like the snake eating its tail thing, but we're witnessing a lot of young men and women not getting married as early as they used to be. And I feel like, I think for a lot of people that are listening that are married and that maybe even are now parents, it does push you to be a man very quickly. Getting married was a great thing for me. It made me care more about someone else. I had a responsibility to her, and then being a father really, really pushed me hard in a good direction, and I think that helped me a lot grow. But even for me, I think somebody that has been listening to our podcast for a while, you've heard me talk about, I kind of grew up around people in a culture that just told you don't get married that early or wait to have children until later. And I really think that was a detriment to me and to my life that I listened to that, because I think if my wife and I would have had children earlier in our marriage, I do think that I would have manned up earlier than I did.
Yeah, having a family, having a wife to care for and children to care for would certainly man you up. And so this phenomenon that he points to, this Guyland, there's probably lots of things to feed into it. And there's going to be some of our listeners that are going to probably recognize this and maybe even be in this kind of Guyland themselves, where they feel like they're not real men. Some of it is self-induced and some of it's not. There's lots of things that we could talk about, I think, that play into it. Women that are increasingly putting off marriage as well. And so there's a lot of young men that are they're struggling with lust, pornography, and no outlet because the women are putting off marriage.
Right. And I'd say one of the big reasons we have Guyland right now is we don't have fatherland.
Right. Many young men don't have fathers who have taught them. They don't have older men in their lives who set an example. And so when we go to that passage that you mentioned, Titus chapter 2, Paul's instructing the people of the church in the various stations of life, and he instructs the older men to set this example by telling them to be temperate, dignified, sensible, sound in faith and love and perseverance. And then just a few verses later, he's got that same one where the young men are to do the same kind of thing. They're to set an example in these things: purity and doctrine, gravity, gravitas, weightiness. And that, going back to our kind of freak out clip, you just hearing that guy talk, there was no weightiness in his voice. It's effeminate. And everything about Guyland is a lack of weightiness. It's a lack of seriousness. It's a lack of purpose and mission. Everything is like, it's a false battle. It's watching people battle in sports, and then it's battling with a virtual battle, going and made up dungeons and made up battlefields. And I don't think my point here is that video games in and of themselves are of the devil. You know, we're not Bobby Boucher's mother. That's of the devil.
The devil.
But there is something about where we can fight the wrong battles or virtual battles instead of actually fighting the battles in front of us. You know, there's real battle against our sin, our flesh. There's the battle against demonic forces seeking to destroy our culture. There's battles against an encroaching state seeking to overtake every area of life. There's a battle to protect the preborn, and the battle, as you mentioned earlier, to raise up faithful generations, to have families.
And one of the things I think I'd like to note about the video game argument here is that a lot of young boys, a growing number of young boys, young men, are obsessed with video games. They're obsessed with Call of Duty. They're obsessed with adventure and battle in a video game setting. Again, we're not saying video games are inherently of the devil, but when your sole source of battle and adventure is a video game, and even for that matter, your sole source of friendship and camaraderie is a video game, the big thing there that you're lacking is risk. There's no risk. There's no risk involved in a video game. You die, you come back. You fail, you try again. I'm not saying you can't do that in real life as far as failing and trying again, but there's really no risk. And so when these young men have to venture out, get a job, or have to actually do something that's worth it, because things that are worth it involve risk, like getting married, having a family, starting a new job, starting your own business, starting a podcast, whatever that might be, they have no risk and prior experience with risk. And so then they're just shocked, and they don't know how to handle it, and they don't know what to do. And it just will destroy a young man when they get to that point if their entire life, all of the risk and battle has been a video game.
Like we said, there could be a lot of reasons for this Guyland. They've developed this whole movement called MGTOW, men going their own way. And they have some real legitimate complaints how the law is set up in many ways against men. But they really make the same mistake the feminists do. So feminists see abuses and sometimes legitimate abuses. They've been real victims of times. And yet their response in it is to do evil, and it's to reject the very thing that makes them vulnerable. And these men going their own way are doing the same thing. They recognize real legitimate problems with feminism. So they point to things like this, these issues, and so they can get really bitter and really fearful. And that's a coward's way out. I'm going to go, we don't need women.
Yeah, the reality of it is that young men need young women, and young women need young men. That's how marriages are built. And the irony, of course, is that this MGTOW movement, men going their own way, the end result of that, or really what it looks like in practice, is Guyland. It doesn't look like men being men. It looks like men being boys or men being guys. And because they give up, it just looks like surrender. That's not a manly thing, to just give up and surrender. Well, I'm just going to go my own way. I'm going to take my toys and go home. That's not manly. That's more like a little boy. So that's sort of the irony, I think, of it, is that there's this whole movement, and it's really not making men better men. It's making them back into boys. So what's the answer to Guyland? How do we leave Guyland? I think one of those things is found in our verse that we were talking about at the beginning of the episode, and if we continue to talk about, which is Titus 2:7, and particularly the word gravity or gravitas. If you don't know what that word is, you're in luck, because we're actually going to take a break here, and when we come back, we're going to go into an interview with C.R. Wiley, and we're going to talk about that very thing, gravitas. So stick around. Don't go anywhere. You are on the Fight, Laugh, Feast Network, and you are listening to The Patriarchy. We'll be right back. The upcoming 2020 G3 conference will be at the Georgia International Convention Center from Thursday, January 16th to Saturday, January 18th. The theme for this conference is worship and will feature speakers such as Paul Washer, James White, Costi Hinn, Tom Askell, Vadi Bakum, and many more. The Fight, Laugh, Feast Network will have a booth there too, and many of the show hosts will also be in attendance. So head over to g3conference.com and sign up today. That's g3conference.com. And make sure to tell them that Cross Politic and the Patriarchy sent you. We are on the line with C.R. Wiley. He is the pastor of Presbyterian Church of Manchester in Manchester, Connecticut. He has been a real estate investor and a college professor. He's the author of 7 books and is currently finishing his 8th. And he is married to his wife of 32 years, Marla, and they have 3 kids together. Chris, welcome to the Patriarchy.
Well, great. Great to be with you guys. Thanks for having me.
So Pastor Chris, you obviously must hate women to be on this show. So why is that so?
Well, they've done so many terrible things to me over the years. Yeah, well, I know the line of thinking that you're making fun of there, and it's kind of odd, isn't it, that we live in a time where matriarchy would be smiled upon and patriarchy is considered a bad thing, but that's the world we live in.
Yeah, that is.
Mm-hmm. Well, we wanted to have you on the show. You've written, like we said, several books. The one in particular that's most fresh in our mind is the one that's called A Man About the House. About
A Man of the House. Man of the House. Yep.
Man of the House. What's the subtitle?
You would you would ask me that. It's on the shelf right over there. It's building a shelter that will last in a world that is falling apart. I think that's what the subtitle is.
Wow,
it's
good
something to that effect.
Yeah. So, well, we there's a lot to cover in this book. I mean, you've done laid out a very good argument for households being productive. But there's one chapter in particular where you talk about a characteristic that men need, and a particular father, especially when leading their home, which is gravitas. And so we wanted to spend some time talking to you about gravitas, what that is, how do men exercise it. So can you kind of maybe even begin by telling us a story of Mr. Shoe from your book?
Right, yeah, Mr. Shoe. Mr. Shoe was the vice principal of discipline in the high school I attended. That tells you something about the era that I grew up in. So this would be like the mid '70s, and he was. By the way, that sound in the background, I'm sitting out my deck, and I got a truck that just went by. In case you guys are wondering what that is, but he had gravitas, It just oozed from him, and it was a natural thing for him. And how it functioned, a little story I think that you're getting at is the one I had in the book. So I remember being on a school bus, and I was like a little 7th grader, 8th grader, something like that, or maybe 9th grader. So, but we had some of the older kids, the kind of kids who everyone feared, and they were sitting in the back of the bus, and they were. It sounded like they were going to have their fun at everyone else's expense on the way home. But we were kind of lined up, buses, lined up to pull out from the school. And one of the guys in the back of the bus just said, "Cool it, it's Mr. Shoe." And so we all look out the window, and there he is. He wasn't a huge guy, but maybe about 6'1", 6'2", and he was in a dark suit. And he was just walking kind of leisurely toward the bus, but purposefully. And he was looking up at the bus. And he had his eyes fixed on the back of the bus where those guys were. And when he stepped onto the bus, it didn't actually happen, but it felt like it could have. It felt like the bus just sort of sunk when he stepped on that first step. And he got up to the next step, and then he just looked in the back of the bus, didn't say a thing. He just looked at those guys, and he just pointed at them and indicated with his finger to come to him. And then he turned around and left the bus, just walked off the bus. And these boys, these guys, they're 16, 17, 18-year-old guys, big guys, they all got up and silently, with their heads down, just went right down the aisle of the bus and left the bus. And then the rest of us felt, tremendous relief that these guys weren't on the bus anymore. But it was like a weight had gone off of our shoulders and had been shifted to their shoulders.
Yeah.
And what we witnessed that day was gravitas, the ability to execute justice with just basically a look and a finger point. And so it's something that some guys have, and Mr. Shu had it.
Yeah, so gravitas is another way to define that or to say it is the word gravity, right? It's a weightiness in a man.
Yeah, exactly right.
So how does a man basically acquire gravitas?
Yeah, I think that's the trick, isn't it? I remember I had a number of years ago, shortly after the book came out, not all that many years ago, but a little while back, I got a letter from a note from an officer in the Marines, and he told me that my chapter on gravitas was actually being passed around the officers' quarters, because obviously they understood the significance of gravitas. They have to exercise it all the time, and they appreciated what I wrote about, and that said a number of things to me. One of the things was they're not reading about this anywhere. That's why they have to read about it from me. But it was something in the ancient world. It was just understood. Particularly, it's a Greek. It's a Latin word, and so it's a word that Rome and Romans understood as being a virtue that makes it possible to execute justice. And I think that's the thing you have to keep in mind. With gravitas, you have to have a purpose. In other words, it's not just simply a sort of a quality that you have. It's a purposeful virtue. It has an end in mind, and the end is to serve justice. Now, it can be misused. There's something similar that you can, it's something similar to gravitas that you can have, which would be a kind of a tyrannical personality that's able to get what you want through fear. But gravitas, when it's exercised in a purposeful way in the service of justice, is something that conveys the idea that if you don't comply with what is just, you'll be cut off. There'll be some consequence that you suffer. So what you need to be able to communicate, if you're going to have gravitas, is sort of almost a sense of dread that you can kind of convey to those who are under your authority. Now, all this stuff is politically incorrect, and no one wants to talk about any of this stuff. But it's absolutely essential for police officers to have it, for judges to have it, for officers in the military to have it. Anyone who's got to get things done when there are people who don't want to do something, and so it's a functional virtue. So acquiring it requires you to have certain things that you can master, or certain practices or ways of behaving that help to get that across. So I imagine you'd like to get into some of that stuff.
Yeah. The Paul tells Titus in Titus chapter 2 that even young men are to have this gravity. And so, we want to talk about how does even a young man acquire this? So what are some of those things that you're talking about?
Well, I think, first of all, you have to have the conviction, and it's got to be a settled conviction, not a sort of like something you're unsure about, but just something you're absolutely certain of, that this is a good thing. And when it's exercised properly, it's appreciated. So those things are key. So a sense of confidence that this is a good thing, but exercising it properly. How do you go about that? Well, I think it has to be something that is always in the service of justice. In particular, is in the service of the weak. So, in that story I told about Mr. Shu, we all dreaded Mr. Shu. Even teachers in that school feared him. I think the principal feared him. He was just that kind of guy. But no one was afraid of him, if you get what I mean. They were afraid of the consequences of doing something wrong that would bring Mr. Shu down on them, which is a great image, Mr. Shu coming down on you.
Yeah.
But that's the key. Everyone has to understand that this is in the service of justice. This is in service of the right. This isn't your personal agenda. This is not your temper tantrum. This is not your need to be in charge or the gratification that you have or experience when you get to push somebody around. None of that nonsense. In fact, all that stuff will undermine gravitas. That'll be a reason why people will want to take you lightly if you're not just. So confidence and then justice. Now, justice is something that we have to be concerned about in a couple of respects. One is, first of all, is there a crime that needs to be addressed? And two is, does the punishment fit the crime? Because if you go overboard, it's too crazy, that kind of thing. It has a way of undermining your authority. So authority has to be a purposeful thing that serves justice, and then how you carry yourself is key. So, another word that's the opposite of gravitas is levity. Levity means lightness, like levitate. So you can think about, now, levity is when you obviously are having fun, you're telling jokes. Now, this doesn't mean that you can never have fun, that you can never tell a joke. But you've got to be able to know, okay, now is the time to be the heavy. And there's another interesting way to think, when you think about like good cop, bad cop, or the heavy is the guy with the gravitas. He's the guy that's going to enforce the rules. So all this has to kind of be in the back of your mind when you are, exercising or justice. You've got to be taken seriously. You've got to be credible. You can't go crazy. You can't be selfish. You can't be looking out, for your own reputation or anything like that. In fact, one of the quickest ways to lose your reputation is to be overly concerned with your reputation. If you're concerned with justice, what's right, and you measure it out correctly, in other words, the execution of justice is itself just, then everyone is going to understand that it's necessary and good. And even when people, maybe are not happy, to be the target, if you get what I mean. So I think all those things have to be in sort of in place. Now, being a big guy or having a low voice, those things certainly help, But I've seen big guys with low voices that people take lightly. I'm sure that you guys can think of people too. And I've known little guys with high voices that people take seriously. So it's not an automatic thing, but certain physical traits are helpful.
I think you touched on some of the answers to this question I'm about to ask, but specifically, how does a father balance gravitas along with being tender as being a father? Like, how does specifically a father with his children kind of balance those two?
Yeah, I think you have to have self-control. If you don't have self-control, then gravitas can degrade or degenerate into some kind of ego trip thing, or it's just some kind of rant or whatever. But if you have the ability to kind of turn it on and turn it off, then when you see that perhaps or when you see that the occasion calls for it. So like with my kids, I could just give them the look. That was like number one.
Yeah.
That's it. That's enough of that. And the kids, 99% of the time would shape up. They didn't want to go beyond the look. So the look was sufficient. And then, when I see the compliance has occurred, then my eyebrows go up. I'm smiling. Hey, everything's great. So I'm generally a happy, jokey guy. But when the time comes, if there's something that has to be addressed, it's best if it's done quick and clean. And now, if you're going to make mistakes, I overdid it sometimes, and I think this is another this is a critical error that I've seen guys commit. If you're in the wrong as a father, admit it. Just go to your kid and say, "Hey, I overdid it. I'm sorry.
Yep.
Will you forgive me?" That'll do more to actually reinforce your authority than denial. Denial will actually undermine your authority in the long haul, because the kid will know that you're not in control of yourself, and you're not in yourself, in a submission to justice and truth. You apply standards to somebody else that you don't apply to yourself, and that undermines your authority. So the tenderness, is kind of like the normal state. You should be like a tender guy with your kids and approachable and stuff like that. But they also need to have a little bit of fear of dad, and fear is a good thing. As believers, we know that we are to fear the Lord. And I think that that's also true with a father who has gravitas. And there needs to be a little bit of fear. Not crazy fear, not, paranoia or mental illness kind of fear, but just respect.
Are there ways that a man can lose gravitas?
Well, yeah, I just described a couple of those. One of them being when you overdo it. Another when you can never be serious. You're always lighthearted. I think we live in an age where we got a lot of needy guys, and they're all looking to be affirmed by their kids, and so they're just they lose. They don't have gravitas at all. They're just anywhere in their lives. They're just soft, and they lack the confidence that I think is necessary to have gravitas. So it's easy to take them lightly, and their kids do. But that's a bad place to be in.
A lot of what you're talking about seems to be faith and confidence in what the mission that God has given you. You talk about towards justice, but there's just a man on a mission cannot be distracted. And so while he can have like jokes and lightheartedness, he doesn't veer from the mission. He stays focused. And I think a perfect picture of what you're talking about is in the book of Job. In Job chapter 29, if you're familiar with that, it's when Job talks about when he used to be, how he was before all the things that had befallen him. And one of the things he talks about is when he would come into the public square, he says, the young men saw me and hid themselves, and the old men arose and stood. The princes stopped talking and put their hands on their mouths. I mean, that's gravitas right there.
Yeah, man, that's it. Right.
Well, hey, as we're wrapping this up, you got any other words of advice you want to give to the men that are listening?
Yeah, I think that, I guess just that to encourage guys, particularly guys who maybe have never seen it exercised, or maybe just don't feel confident. I think the thing to say to guys is that this is one of the ways that you can be a blessing to your wife and to your kids. This is not something to dread. This is not something, in other words, being dreaded is not something to dread. There needs to be a little bit of, that heaviness in a home for the home to be happy. And that's a paradox, but why should we be surprised? The Bible's full of paradoxes, all sorts of things that the Lord said, for example, if you want to save your life, you lose it, and so forth. This is one of those things. When kids have a father who has gravitas, they feel secure, they feel protected, they know that the bad guys in the outside world won't come inside because they got a big, hairy, scary, smelly dad that it will take care of them, that kind of thing.
Chris, if anybody online wants to contact you or learn more about what you're doing, maybe find some of your books, can you let our listeners know where they can do that or how they can contact you?
Sure, that's easy to do. crwiley.com, and Wiley is spelled W-I-L-E-Y, so crwiley.com, and that's my author page, and there are the books featured there, and some podcasts and interviews and videos and different things.
Great. Well, Chris, thanks for coming on. I'm sure we'll have you back on soon.
All right. Well, great. Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
Thanks, man. That was C.R. Wiley, author of Man of the House, a handbook for building a shelter that will last in a world that is falling apart. You are on the Fight, Laugh, Feast Network, and you are listening to The Patriarchy. We'll be right back. That was Frank Valli in the Four Seasons. That was released in 1963, but I think they actually wrote the theme song for MGTOW, Men Going Their Own Way.
Yeah, it's I don't need any woman, so I'm going to walk like a man, talk like a man, right?
Right. It's kind of the opposite if you're just walking away.
Yeah. But there's truth there that there is a way to walk and talk like a man, and we've just been talking to Pastor Wiley about gravitas. There's a sense of weightiness. And so there's probably going to be people out there like, okay, that's great. How do I develop that? How do I develop gravitas? And you're in luck. I've worked up about seven keys, I think, to developing gravitas. And I'll admit right off the top the bat that I don't have all these worked out and carried as well in my life, but I'm working on them. And I hope to be able to develop some very weighty gravitas as well. All right. The very first and most important point is you need to be assured of your value in Christ Jesus, right? Because you are a son of God, because what Christ has done for you on the cross, you don't have to prove to anyone else your value. So men of gravitas are men who are assured of their identity and of their purpose. They can stand before kings or even a room of children, and they can remain themselves because they don't have anything to prove. They don't have to prove to someone else. So a lightweight man is a man that's always trying to please other people because he doesn't have faith in Christ, and he's just not sure of his mission and vision.
And this is an area that is near and dear to my heart because I struggled with this for a good long while in my life. There was a time when I had so much regard for what other people thought that it would really just kind of stunt me from doing a whole lot of things or saying a lot of things that I knew were right and that there was nothing wrong with. But because I knew that somebody was going to disagree with me, I shy away from doing it. That's not something I'm proud to admit, but I say that on here because I think a lot of people listening probably think, well, hey, these guys are on a podcast called The Patriarchy. They have segments called Feminist Freak Out of the Week. They don't care what anybody thinks. And that's not entirely true. I mean, there are people that we have high opinions of their opinions on, and sometimes we'll go to them for their advice on something. But we don't sit around, in particular, I don't sit around worrying anymore about, well, what if somebody doesn't like what we're doing? What if somebody disagrees with what I'm doing? Even though I know what we're doing is good, I know what we're doing is helpful to other people and is honoring to God, I don't sit around and wonder about that anymore, because one thing I've learned in my life, and most people know this, but you do kind of have to take it to heart, is this. You can't please everybody, okay? You can't. There's always going to be somebody who's going to disagree with you, and you need to get that through your head. And once you do, and then you rest in your worth in Christ, and you rest in your mission, which is in Scripture as a man, it'll go way better for you. Just take it from me, rest in that, and it'll go much, much better for you.
Yeah. So you've got to be, so it's so valuable that I want to just reiterate that again. You've got to be sure of your identity in Christ, and also sure of your mission and vision, the mission that God's given you. So wherever that may be. And so if you're confident in that, you can walk anywhere and go anywhere, because you know who has you. Let's move on to the second point, which is a man of gravitas strives to be fair. He's slow to speak, quick to listen. He listens to concern of others. So when a man walks in a room and he has weightiness, part of the way that you can just sense that is that this is a man that you know is going to be fair. He will speak the truth even when his own side is wrong. So he's not partisan. He's not always partial. He's a man that you feel you can get a fair hearing with.
You know that verse, slow to speak and quick to listen? Oh man, my dad repeated that over and over when I was growing up, and I absolutely hated it. But he was right, and it was a good lesson to learn. I don't think I learned it until later in life, but I do look back on that now, and I love my dad for drilling that into me, because that was something that I think every man needs to learn.
Number 3, this is not in contrast to number 1, but number 3 is obviously be humble. And this is very important. You can be confident and humble at the same time. Pride is the opposite of confidence in the Lord. Pride is an over-evaluation of who you are.
Yeah, it's a misplaced sense of worth.
It really, what this is Barney Fifing, which we're going to talk about in another episode. But it's like this pride of your position and walking around always trying to make people think of your respect. And, people do this like, got a chip on their shoulder and they're always daring you to knock it off. That's not gravitas. That's tyranny. And nobody respects that. So, but if you have humbleness, then you will be confident that the Lord has given you the tools necessary to accomplish your task. And so humbleness is really tied to that first point. Faith that God's enabled you to do what he's called you to do. And so you can walk with your shoulders back and your head up.
Right. And I think if we properly understand number 1, that this will come easier, because if we find our worth in Christ, we know that it's he who does all things through us, right? He's our strength, not us. And so we don't have a reason to be prideful in ourselves if we know that our strength comes through Christ.
And so if you're humble, you trust that you're in God's hands, and you're striving to be fair, these next things are just going to come pretty naturally, which is number 4, a man of gravitas is guard your words. We already said this, be slow to speak, quick to listen. And when you do speak, choose your words carefully, and then be bold to speak when you speak. So speak the truth clearly and unashamed. We live in a time with it's kind of cluttered with airy words, glib evasions, obtuse answers, self-serving lies. We live in a world where men will nuance everything to death rather than to speak the truth or be passive-aggressive. They won't tell you to your face what they're thinking, but then they'll go on social media and make a little post, or they'll talk behind each other's back. There's nothing weighty about that. There's no gravitas. But a man who's committed to and burdened with the weight of truth, He's a man who speaks in a way that has gravitas. So we need to be men who are renowned for truth telling, for our commitment to speak as if our words really matter, and for our courage to say what needs to be said, even when it's unpopular. And going along with that, we also need to be careful that when we do speak, we don't speak it glibly or lightly. We don't speak of weighty matters in such a way as to diminish the weight of them. That doesn't mean that we're stick in the mud, but there is truth to the Puritans were always talking about seriousness. There's a seriousness that a man has that when he recognized the truth of the matter, it's not a laughing matter to speak these things glibly or like you're trading playing cards. So many people take doctrines and it's like, what doctrine are you? Well, I'm post-mill and theonomic and Calvinist and all these things. And we talk about them in such a way that like they are like we're trading cards rather than like weighty matters of truth about the God of the universe who created everything. And we just sometimes talk about God in such a glib way. Whereas a man of gravitas guards his words. He speaks his words clearly. 1 Corinthians 14:9 says, so also you, unless you utter by the tongue speech that is clear, how will it be known what is spoken? For you will be speaking into the air. So speak your words clearly. Look a man in the eyes and speak loud enough to be heard.
And this is, of course, massively important as fathers, too, right? And I say that because if you listen to our last mini-sode, you know that my family recently had another baby, a baby boy. So in the middle of the night, I realized this was not going to happen at home like it did with our last child, that there were complications. I needed to get my wife and my unborn baby to the hospital and make sure that this went okay and they were taken care of. But I also had children asleep in the house. So I had to call my folks, tell them to come over and get my kids. And I had to get my kids up, ready to go, and get them in the van quickly. So as I'm getting my daughter in the van, she looks up at me, and I could just tell something was wrong. And I said, what's wrong, honey? And she said, I don't want to lose my mom. And so I said to her, honey, who made your mom? And she said, God did. I said, who made women? She said, God did. I said, who made women to have babies? She said, God did. I said, honey, do you trust me? And she said, yeah. And I said, then trust God. And she reached up, gave me a big hug, and she whispered in my ear, thank you, Daddy. I said, you're welcome, honey. I love you. And then she went off with my folks. And sometimes as a father, right, you surprise yourself. So I'm walking away from that thinking, that's exactly what she needed to hear. And I told her exactly what she needed to hear. And what she needed to hear wasn't joking dad. It wasn't silly daddy. What she needed was her dad. She needed a man to tell her what this situation was and what she needed to do. And that's what we're saying is so important, that there are times you have to be direct, you have to be blunt if need be, and you have to speak with authority and not mince your words, because people need that, especially as a father. Your children need that.
Number 5, we've talked about speech. Here's something we don't often like to think about the physical things, but the physical things matter. They reveal what's on our heart. The Bible speaks often of shifty eyes. A man of shifty eyes, you can't be trusted. And so we need to focus on our posture, right? If you're confident in the Lord and your mission, you'll want to carry yourself in a manner that's pleasing to God, it's beneficial to your mission. Therefore, your posture, your tone of voice, your clothing, the way you carry yourself matters. So walk like a man, not slouched or with your head down, but your shoulders back, your chest out, your head up. Look people in the eyes. Remember your manners. How do you sit in the church? Are you slouched? Are you sitting straight, ready to hear? How do you dress? Do you always look like you got out of bed or you just got back from the gym? Do you wear hats in buildings, especially the church? This is something I'm stickler at. I've seen grown men wearing baseball caps in a church building or even inside. Hats are meant to protect our head from the weather. That show manners by taking them off and display our heads. Our heads are we're the glory of God. Let's let that be displayed. How do you chew your food? You sit at the table. How do you treat a woman when she walks into the room? How do you talk when a woman's around? How do you treat people who are older than you? All these things matter. Philippians 2:3-4 says, do nothing from selfish or empty conceit, but with humility of mind, regard one another as more important than yourselves. Do not merely look out for your own personal interests, but also for the interest of others. So manners, these kind of things are weighty. The way you carry yourself, the way you dress. If you want to have gravitas, then you'll walk like a man that deserves respect, and you'll dress like a man. It doesn't necessarily mean you're always in a 3-piece suit. All right. But it does mean that you're going to dress appropriately for the occasion. And there's very few occasions where your pajamas
oh, wow. Yeah, right.
are appropriate. Right?
Yeah, I'm so tired.
But you go to places, you go to like Walmart, and you'll find people dressed in pajamas.
Yeah, you'd think it was 2 a.m. in the morning. Like they just walk around in sweatpants, and it drives me nuts.
There's no sense of respect when it comes to what they wear.
Well, and something we'd probably point out too is we're not saying that dressing the right way and walking a certain way is automatically going to make you a man, but it should be a reflection of how you view yourself and how you view your what you have to do in life. And it can take practice. I mean, there was a time in my life where I don't think my posture was that great, and I realized it, and you just fix it, and you get in the habit of doing that, and then it becomes second nature, and then you don't even really think about it anymore.
Yeah, and you're right. We're not saying, because gay men are well known for being well dressed.
Yes, yeah.
So there's actually you can take this too far and become like a peacock. And you know what I'm saying? Like,
yes, very much.
A woman is meant to be the glory of man. She's supposed to be beautiful. Men are supposed to, in one sense, our dress is, we are uncareful about how we dress, in a sense of not always worried what we're wearing. And so, like, you can always tell when a man's too worried. His eyebrows are plucked perfectly, and he's got skinny jeans, and he's just you can go so far into being effeminate.
Well, you think about weddings, right? You think about how men are dressed at weddings. They're generally all in the same tuxedo or the same suit, black suit, black tie kind of thing or whatever. And they're dressed proper. They look like men. They look handsome, but they're not like a peacock. They don't stand out. Whereas the women at a wedding, a lot of times they have very fancy dresses on, very flowy dresses. Their hair's done a certain way. They're brighter colors, and that's kind of the difference. What you'd say is, a woman is supposed to be beautiful. A woman is supposed to, you're supposed to notice that about a woman. Whereas with a man, you're not supposed to walk into a room and automatically just go, "Oh wow, that guy over there, is look at all the colors," and I don't know, like you're not look at all the different colors that he's wearing. I mean, that's not what we're talking about.
Yeah. All right. So actually what you're saying ties perfectly in the number 6, which is have situational awareness. Recognize the situation you're in and you act appropriately. There's a time for everything under the sun. That includes humor, times to laugh deeply, and there's times to mourn and cry. But you need to be aware of your situation, and then spend your time on the things that matter. Guyland, we mentioned it in the first segment. It's forgotten situational awareness, and everything's the same situation. Everything is Guyland. Whereas a man recognizes there's different situation and he acts appropriately.
Well, this comes with experience, and it also is a good opportunity for our younger listeners. When you're in a situation and you have older godly men around you, observe how they handle a situation. Observe how they talk, what they say, when they don't say things, when they're quiet, when they make a joke, when they don't. Great opportunities. As sad as it is, sometimes funerals I found are wonderful opportunities to learn from older men, because I've heard some older men say some very deep truths. Usually it's few words because it's a somber situation, but I've learned a lot during those. I've also learned a lot during happier times too, when things are laid back. But I think it's a great opportunity for younger men, any men really, to learn from an older man in the faith about how they handle a situation, and then kind of contemplate on that, and you'll learn through experience that way.
All right, so the last point here is be able to reflect back and be self-critical. So we started off by saying we're secure in our identity with Christ, our faith and our eyes on Christ, who he's called us to be, our mission and our vision. But a man of gravitas, of weight, is able to be critical of himself, but not just critical, but recognize weaknesses and then make corrections. But he doesn't do this all. It's not navel gazing so that he's left doubting everything. It's kind of a checkup every once in a while. So, when you're driving down the road, you've got your eyes forward, and every once in a while you might check the gauges, see how they're doing. But if you spend all your time looking at the gauges while you're driving, I don't want to be in your vehicle.
Well, I have to check my Instagram feed, don't I, while I'm driving? I have to make sure that all of my selfies have enough likes. And yeah.
And your Pinterest.
Yeah. No, that's the matriarchy. That's Letters and Todd.
Oh, sorry. But no, checking every once in a while to see, all right, how am I doing? How did I get from where I was to now? And what do I need to correct? And one way to do this checking is let your pastors and the older men do this by being around them, hearing the sermon preached, and correcting yourself and repenting. And if you've got children, you want to have gravitas, you need to repent when you fail to them, apologize, seek forgiveness, set the example of that in your home. That will do much to set you with gravitas.
Yeah, I've had those conversations with my kids, and it's a humbling thing, but it's a learning experience. Yeah, to walk into your child's room and say, "Dad was wrong," I was too harsh with you, or whatever it might be, and apologize to him. And I've asked my son, will you forgive me? And he goes, yeah, and he gives me a big hug. And but yeah, it's a humbling thing, and it makes you remember it, and it makes you want to improve.
All right, so these are the 7 things, and I'm sure there are more, even other ways that might be helpful. But what I want to do is see in my life, and the lives of my sons, and the lives of men everywhere, I want to see them set an example, as Titus says, in these things, with the hopes that Guyland might end. There's this TV show we like to watch with our family called Little House on the Prairie. And I'm going to give a little spoiler. At the very last episode, the very end of it, the town that they live in, called Walnut Grove, they blow the whole thing up. Just gets completely exploded. And that's kind of what I want to see happen to Guyland. Just blow it up.
Well, yeah, and if you're listening and you're currently living in Guyland, but you realized it, congratulations, you realized it. So do something about it. And I give you credit. Just like we're talking about, admit when you're wrong. Look, we all are at different spots at this point. We're all at different walks. Joseph and I are not perfect men. We started this podcast just because we saw problems and we thought we wanted to address them. And there's things we've talked about on this podcast that I've been encouraged by and thought, man, you know what, I need to do that better. So, look, if you're living in Guyland right now, get out of Guyland, okay? You heard it here. You've been convicted of it. Pray to God, repent of what you've been doing, and seek older, godly men. Go to your local church, talk to your pastor, talk to other men in the faith, and figure out how you're going to get yourself out of Guyland and into, I don't know, what are we calling the exit of Guyland? Manhood? Manland?
Yeah, manhood. Manhood is what I would
just
say.
Manhood. Yes. Just get into manhood, and you'll be better for it. And so what better way to exit Guyland than to get rid of all the stupid junk that's on TV that you're watching, and instead go to fightlaughfeast.com. Yeah, you knew I was going to do. Man, I snuck it in there, didn't I? Go to fightlaughfeast.com, click to sign up to become a member, and use the code Patriarchy to get access to behind-the-scenes content, extra materials, sermons, get yourself a t-shirt, coffee. For a limited time, you can get a mug. It's really great stuff. Goes to help support the network and our podcast if you use the code Patriarchy when you sign up. Thank you to everybody, by the way, that has been doing that and becoming members. You will not regret it, and we really do appreciate it very, very much. So go do that right now. FightLaughFeast.com. Use the code Patriarchy. And so until next time, as always, if you have not yet bowed your knee to Christ, repent and believe. And if you have, this is our call to you. Build, fight, protect, lead. This is the Patriarchy.